If you're a seasoned open source developer or you're just starting up, having a well-defined contribution guide is very important for attracting contributors and also maintaining a healthy project. So today I'll be sharing how you can create a contribution guide with examples for your open source projects. My name is Feni Nyaich and I'm a web developer, technical writer, and also I contribute to open source projects. So first, let's talk about why does contribution guide really matters for any open source project. A contribution guide is essential because it sets a clear expectations for potential contributors. Also, it helps the contributors understand how they can add value to your project. This also ensures consistency in contributions and can significantly reduce the friction of onboarding new contributors. So what's the perfect way of starting your contribution guide? You need to start with a warm welcome. This basically will give an introduction and also a section that sets a tone and makes the contribution feel valid. So let's take a look at an example of this. So I'll just create a new file here and I call it contribution.md. So now we mentioned that a warm welcome. So this is how our warm welcome will look like. Welcome to the project name. So for example, our project here is Taskmaster. So you can simply just say, thank you for considering contributing to your project name. In our case, whatever it is, I'll call it Taskmaster. We are excited to have you here. We can't wait to see what you'll bring to the project, whether you're fixing a bug or adding a new feature, etc. Your help is highly appreciated. So this is the first step into the contribution, so that anyone who is trying to contribute feels welcome. So we have looked at an example of a welcome message. So the second thing is outlining the contribution process, which are basically the steps contributors should follow when their contributions. This basically outlines the steps contributors should follow to make their contributions be as detailed as possible to avoid confusion. So I'll give you an example of how to contribute. So let's go back to our VS Code. From here, we can create a second heading and just have it, how to contribute. You can say this is a basic contribution example. You can say fork the repository and then explain, start by forking the repository to your GitHub account, clone the repository, clone your fork to your local machine, like using git clone, and then all that process, like a step-by-step guide, make changes to the new branch, ensure your code follows the project's coding standards, and then push to GitHub and then submit a pull request. And then you can see when I preview the contribution, you can see this is how it looks like. So let's continue. You've seen a basic outline of the contribution process. So let's talk about coding standards. To maintain consistency, it's important to define your project's coding standards. This can include the code style, the formatting, and also the naming conventions. So let's take a look at an example of how you can come up with a coding standard for your open source project. So right below here, you can write another heading and call it coding standards. So from here, you can explain to the contributor that use this coding style. You can choose a coding style of your choice, for example, PEP 8 for Python projects, and then write clear, concise comments and then follow specific naming conventions. For example, Camel case for variables, Pascal case for classes, and then ensure your code passes all tests submitted to the pull requests. This is an example of a coding standard. Depending on what your open source project is like, you can list down all the standards in this section. And when you preview your contribution guide, you see that this is how it will appear. So after setting up your coding standards, you can provide testing instructions. This will make it easy for anyone who is going to contribute to your project to run tests and also ensure that their changes do not break existing functionalities. So let's take an example of how running a test instruction would look like. So you can just create another subheading of running tests. So here you can just write a simple instruction. Before submitting your pull request, please run tests to ensure everything is working correctly. So they give you a guide. You can install the necessary dependencies using npm install, whatever your open source project is, run tests, and if to fail, fix them before submitting any pull requests. This is an example. You can see the tone is welcoming. The tone is just clear and easy to understand for anyone looking for that. So next is we need to create code of conduct. So for the code of conduct, this is basically a section that will set expectations for behavior within your community and also it will help create a welcoming environment for all contributors. So for example, our code of conduct will just look like this. We are committed to fostering a welcoming, inclusive environment for all contributors. Please read our code of conduct, then you can add the link there to understand expectations for behavior in our community. So you can just share a link if it is somewhere linked, or you can just write them directly in here. So we have looked at our code of conduct already and an example. The next thing is to list available resources to help whoever is going to start contributing. And then lastly, offering ways to get help. So let's look at these two examples. So just below the code of conduct, you can just put there resources. And in the resources, you can add a link to your project documentation. You can put a link to getting started guide. You can put any link, maybe that has tutorials, etc. And then lastly, we can add the section for getting help. So this section is just simple. You can say if you need help or have any questions, reach out to us maybe on Slack or open an issue. And here include the link to that particular issue. Feel free to use this template to draft your open source contribution guidelines. And when I preview it, this is how it will look. You can see welcome to the project name, how to contribute, the coding standards, running tests, code of conduct, and then here links to the different resources, and then also links to your Slack channel, and also how you can get in touch with the contributors. So I'll put this to GitHub and link it. If you need it as a template, feel free to grab it. So winding up, creating a contribution guide is a powerful way to attract and retain contributors to your open source project. So provide these instructions and welcome everyone into your open source community. This will ensure that your project continues to grow and thrive within time. So your contribution guide is also a living document. It has to be updated regularly based on feedback from contributors to keep it relevant and also helpful. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, feel free to write it in the comments, and see you in the next one.